Good morning, philosophers. Hope you're having a fine day. I have more on my to-do list today than I've had in weeks, so I'm going to have to be relentless and just destroy this day from beginning to end. I'm going to do it. But first, let us continue our reading of Meditations. We're in the end of Book 8, it looks like. Number 44. Give yourself a gift, the present moment. People out for posthumous fame forget that the generations to come will be the same annoying people they know now, and just as mortal. What does it matter to you if they say X about you or think Y? 45. My best answer to that question would be I wish I had like a long family history. Well, maybe. Because if it was a bad one, that would be bad. But if I knew about, like generations of people that did, and I had records of like amazing things that they did or really cool knowledge about who they were and what they were interested in and what they accomplished and what kind of people they were, it would give me something that I could sort of live up to or try and, improve on, even maybe if it was bad. And so what does it matter to me if people say X about me or think Y in the future when I'm dead? Well, I would like to think that I will have lived my life in a way that will give my kids something to be proud of, kids to be proud of and to live up to. And that's my best answer to that question. Number 45. Lift me up and hurl me, whatever you will. My spirit will be gracious to me there, gracious and satisfied, as long as its existence and actions match its nature. Is there any reason why my soul should suffer and be degraded, miserable, tense, huddled, frightened? How could there be? 46. What humans experience is part of human experience. The experience of the ox is part of the experience of oxen, as the vines is of the vine, and the stones what is proper to stones. Nothing can happen is unusual or unnatural, and there's no sense in complaining. Nature does not make us endure the unendurable. Well, nature kills us all the time, which is technically trying to make us endure the unendurable. So I don't like, this is another facet of Stoicism. I'm going to write that down for when I interview the Stoic expert. That is a fair challenge of Stoicism. Nature often does make us endure the unendurable. That's called killing us. 47. External things are not the problem. It's your assessment of them, which you can erase right now. If the problem is something in your own character, who's stopping you from setting your mind straight? And if it's that you're not doing something you think you should be, why not just do it? But there are insuperable obstacles. Then it's not a problem. The cause of your inaction lies outside. But how can I go on living with that undone? Then depart with a good conscience, and if you'd done it, embracing the obstacles too. 48. Remember that when it withdraws into itself and finds contentment there, the mind is invulnerable. It does nothing against its will, even if its resistance is irrational, and if its judgment is deliberate and grounded in logic. The mind without passions is a fortress. No place is more secure. Once we take refuge there, we are safe forever. Not to see this is ignorance. To see it and not seek safety means misery. 49. Nothing but what you get from first impressions. That someone has insulted you, for instance. That, but not that it's done you any harm. The fact that my son is sick, that I can see, but that he might die of it. No. Stick with the first impressions. Don't extrapolate, and nothing can happen to you. Or extrapolate from a knowledge of all that can happen in the world. 50. The cucumber is bitter? Then throw it out. There are brambles in the path, then go around them. That's all you need to know, nothing more. Don't demand to know why such things exist. Anyone who understands the world will laugh at you, just as a carpenter would if you seemed shocked at finding sawdust in his workshop, or a shoemaker at scraps of leather left over from work. Of course, they have a place to dispose of these. Nature has no door to sweep things out of. But the wonderful thing about its workmanship is how, faced with that limitation, it takes everything within it that seems broken, old and useless, transforms it into itself, and makes new things from it, so that it doesn't need material from any outside source, or anywhere to dispose of what's left over. It relies on itself for all it needs: space, material, and labor. 51. No carelessness in your actions, no confusion in your words, no imprecision in your thoughts, no retreating into your own soul or trying to escape it, no overactivity. They kill you, cut you with knives, shower you with curses, and that somehow cuts your mind off from clearness and sanity and self-control and justice? A man standing by a spring of clear sweet water and cursing it, while the fresh water keeps on bubbling up. He can shovel mud into it, or dung, and the stream will carry it away, wash itself clean, remain unstained. To have that, not a cistern, but a perpetual spring. How? By working to win your freedom, hour by hour, through patience, honesty, humility. Number 52. Not to know what the world is to be ignorant of where you are. Not to know why it's here is to be ignorant of who you are and what it is. Not to know any of this is to be ignorant of why you're here. And what are we to make of anyone who cares about the applause of such people who don't know where or who they are? 53. You want praise from people who kick themselves every 15 minutes. The approval of people who despise themselves. Is it a sign of self-respect to regret nearly everything you do? 54. To join ourselves not just to the air surrounding us, through breath, but to the reason that embraces all things through thought. Reason is just as omnipresent, just as widely diffused in those who accept it as air is in those who breathe. Reason is just as omnipresent, just as widely diffused in those who accept it, as air is in those who breathe. I wish. I wish. 55. The existence of evil does not harm the world, and an individual act of evil does not harm the victim. What? Only one person is harmed by it, and he can stop being harmed as soon as he decides to. That I can't even figure out how to make that make sense. Maybe that's another one for the interview. "56. Other people's wills are as independent of mine as their breath and bodies. We may exist for the sake of one another, but our will rules its own domain. Otherwise, the harm they would do would cause harm to me, which is not what God intended for my happiness to rest with somebody else." 57. This is that collectivism, again, inherent in a lot of the Stoicism. 57. We speak of the sun's light as pouring down on us, as pouring over us in all directions, yet it's never poured out, because it doesn't really pour. It extends. Its beams get their name from their extension. To see the nature of a sunbeam, look at light as it falls through a narrow opening into a dark room. It extends in a straight line, striking any solid object that stands in its way and blocks the space beyond it. There it remains, not vanishing or falling away. That's what the outpouring, the diffusion of thought should be like. Not emptied out, but extended. And not striking at obstacles with fury and violence or falling away before them, but holding its ground and illuminating what receives it. What doesn't transmit light creates its own darkness. 58. Fear of death is fear of what we may experience, nothing at all or something quite new. But If we experience nothing, we can experience nothing bad. And if our experience changes, then our existence will change with it. Change but not cease. 59. People exist for one another. You can instruct or endure them. I see no evidence that that's the case. I mean, okay, let's think about it. So, I mean, we're definitely, I think we just talked about this yesterday, we're definitely like a symbiotic sort of species. Like, to rise above like bare metal survival subsistence existence, we have to make connections with one another and specialize into trades, and that makes us depend on one another, which I don't know if I would go so far as to say that's existing for one another. I think everyone can exist for themselves and still find that they're better off working together in that way. Number 60. An arrow has one motion and the mind another. Even when pausing, even when weighing conclusions, the mind is moving forward toward its goal. 61. To enter others' minds and let them enter yours. All right. Book 9. We are 2/3 through this book. Number 1. Injustice is a kind of blasphemy. Nature designed rational beings for each other's sake, to help not harm one another, as they deserve. To transgress its will, then, is to blaspheme against the oldest of the gods. And to lie is to blaspheme against it too, because nature means the nature of that which is, and that which is the case are closely linked, so that nature is synonymous with truth, the source of all true things. To lie deliberately is to blaspheme. The liar commits deceit and thus injustice, and likewise to lie without realizing it. Because the involuntary liar disrupts the harmony of nature, its order. He is in conflict with the way the world is structured, as anyone is who deviates toward what is opposed to the truth, even against his will. Nature gave him the resources to distinguish between true and false, and he neglected them, and now can't tell the difference. And to pursue pleasure as good and flee from pain as evil, that too is blasphemous. Someone who does that is bound to find himself constantly reproaching nature, complaining that it doesn't treat the good and bad as they deserve, but often lets the bad enjoy pleasure and the things that produce it, and makes the good suffer pain, and the things that produce pain. And moreover, to fear pain is to fear something that's bound to happen, the world being what it is, and that again is blasphemy. While if you pursue pleasure, you can hardly avoid wrongdoing, which is manifestly blasphemous. Some things nature is indifferent to. If it privileged one over the other, it would hardly have created both, and if we want to follow nature, to be of one mind with it, we need to share its indifference. To privilege pleasure over pain, life over death, fame over anonymity, is clearly blasphemous. Nature certainly doesn't. Isn't this like trying to say, like, because nature is, well, I mean, nature is not sentient and doesn't value anything over anything else. So isn't this trying to say, oh, well, we should make ourselves unthinking, non-sentient automatons? Which, that's weird. And when I say that nature is indifferent to them, I mean that they happen indifferently at different times to the things that exist and the things that come into being after them. Through some ancient decree of providence, the decree by which from some initial starting point it embarked on the creation that we know, by laying down the principles of what was to come and determining the generative forces, existence and change, and their successive stages. Number 2. I think that was the longest section in the entire book so far. He actually wrote an entire page at once. Number 2. Real good luck would be to abandon life without ever encountering dishonesty, or hypocrisy, or self-indulgence, or pride. But the next best voyage is to die when you've had enough. Or are you determined to lie down with evil? Hasn't experience even taught you that? To avoid it like the plague, because it is a plague. A mental cancer, worse than anything caused by tainted air or an unhealthy climate. Diseases like that can only threaten your life. This one attacks your humanity. That's pretty good. Dishonesty, hypocrisy, self-indulgence, and pride is a plague, a mental cancer, worse than anything caused by tainted air or unhealthy climates. Diseases like that can only threaten your life. This one attacks your humanity. All right, guys. That was good. Let's see. What did I have for today? Ah, yes. Entropy. Good old entropy. My note was, entropy is always working toward ending everything. You know, good old cheery thoughts for the day. Life is fighting against that. The day you don't need to fight entropy is the day you died, or the end of the universe. What does that mean? Well, it means that you should love the fight against entropy the same as you love living, because it's basically the same thing. And what do I mean by that? Like, in a day-to-day practical sense? I mean, like, you got to clean the house every day. Every day. Every day it gets dirty again, and the next day you clean it again. And for some reason, we tend to hate that. Hate those things, those problems that can never be fully resolved once and for all, the problems that never go away, that we have to work every day to keep under control and in check. You're fighting against entropy. Hunger would be another one, a more obvious one, but it illustrates the point better. Like, every day you get hungry, every day you have to produce effort and be productive to provide food for your body, to fight the entropy of, you know, your body dying and rotting away. But at least when you think about that, maybe it's more clear why that's absurd. Like, it is living to need to work to fight that force of entropy. That is life. So it would be kind of dumb to hate that. Like, if we love living, then we have to love that stuff as almost the same thing as living. Like, we shouldn't hate cleaning. Like, that's part of being alive. We should embrace that. We should enjoy that. We should take that on as part of this life experience that we love. For necessary things, obviously. I'm not talking about unnecessary, repetitive problems that won't go away. I'm talking about necessary stuff. But if it's unnecessary, why are we doing it? We need to stop doing the unnecessary stuff. So those kinds of things are what I'm going to think about today as I go throughout my day. If I'm doing another repetitive thing that, you know, is a problem that's never going to go away, I'm going to ask if it's essential first. If it's not essential, I'm getting rid of it, and I'm going to find a way to get rid of it and stop having to do it every day. And if it is essential, I'm going to try and learn to appreciate it as part of life. Because I really enjoy living. And if that's part of life, then so be it. All right, guys. I guess the channel that has turned into Patrick Reads Things will return soon. Have a good day.